Okay. Okay. Let's start with the prayers. And of course, with the right kind of motivation, most importantly. Until I reach enlightenment, I take refuge in the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. By accumulating merit and wisdom through generosity and the other perfections, may I attain Buddhahood for the benefit of all sentient beings. Until I reach enlightenment, I take refuge in the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. By accumulating merit and wisdom through generosity and the other perfections, may I attain Buddhahood for the benefit of all sentient beings. Until I reach enlightenment, I take refuge in the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. By accumulating merit and wisdom through generosity and the other perfections, may I attain Buddhahood for the benefit of all sentient beings. May all sentient beings have happiness and the causes of happiness. May all sentient beings be free from suffering and the causes of suffering. May all sentient beings never be separated from the happiness that is free from suffering. May all sentient beings abide in equanimity, free from attachment and anger that holds some close and others distant. I pay homage to the Sublime Mother of the victorious ones of the three times, the inexpressible, inconceivable, and indescribable perfection of wisdom, which is unborn, unceasing, and of the nature of space, and which is the object of realization of the self-knowing primordial wisdom. Okay, so I'll keep the phone on today so as not to miss any of your messages. Hopefully it'll work. I tried to put it on display like for 30 minutes in one go, but it doesn't seem to do what I want it to do, so let's see. What's happening? Storm, earthquakes. Did you feel the earthquake last night? Yeah, that was pretty strong. 4.9, and it was only around the corner, 40 kilometers from here.
Did you know before that it would happen?
Oh, I knew for days. No.
Because of your mind, just because I asked the people in the house I was living, because I was really shocked. The whole house was shaking.
Oh.
So and I asked them if they didn't know before, and they know it before of the news.
Well, the thing is that this area is earthquake prone, so we've been expecting it. And many little ones are good, they release the pressure. So many little ones are welcome. There was one at 8 in the morning yesterday?
At 2.7 it was.
I didn't even notice.
I don't think anybody noticed.
All right, well, impermanence. A constant reminder. Okay. Well, first of all, thank you very much for your participation in the group, in the discussion group. Amazing. I couldn't even keep up. Oh, thank you, Dunya. I couldn't even keep up with all the messages that kept popping up. Very good. These were really amazing. And I want to respond a little bit to some of what you said. Let me just find what I was looking for. Oh, yeah. Some of the points you made, but I can't go through everything. Like, no way. And I'm just going to, like, the longer discussion at the end, I'm just going to quickly address, but it's really important. It comes up in the debates. So, anyway, Hella, she said something about the circle. That's when I went back to the group, and she talked about what is samsara, and her response was a circle of rebirth caused by karma and afflictions. That's not wrong. That is how it's sometimes described. But when you talk about being reborn in samsara, as I said last time, it's more like the 5 aggregates. And of those, it's mainly a state of mind, and she also mentioned that. Then Bernd talked about plants could be emanations of Buddhas and Bodhisattvas, and yes, absolutely. Venerable Gyaltsen Hamel confirmed that. You know, Buddhas and Bodhisattvas can emanate as anything. even as inanimate objects, so as living beings, as plants, trees, and so forth. And then Venerable Yangdrun, she said that His Holiness has once said, not everything is karma. His Holiness has said that on a few occasions, actually. So yes, Holiness has said that not everything that appears is karma. Now the question is, of course, what exactly is karma and what is not? How do you delineate, or how do you separate? But one thing that is very clearly not karma is the fact that everything changes constantly. Subtle impermanence, impermanence in general, is not our karma. It's not like, oh, we accumulated the karma for everything to be impermanent. If we hadn't, then things would be more permanent. No. So these characteristics, these features like impermanence or emptiness, they're not an individual's karma. But the texts are very clear about saying our experiences, first of all, the experiences we have on a daily basis. And of course, these experiences don't exist isolated from the environment we live in. And it's said that also the environment we live in and the sentient beings in the environment are the result of karma and afflictions. Now, when we say sentient beings in general, we're not saying that there's this general karma. We're saying each and every individual has a particular karma to experience a certain environment and so forth. I think that's how you could phrase it. And then when we talk about collective karma, well, sometimes we have similar experiences. They're not the same. I'm pretty sure everyone experienced the earthquake yesterday differently, in a different place. In my case, it was like someone pushed me from underneath. It felt like that. I was like, oh my God, it's cement. How is that even possible? It felt like something pushed me. But my neighbors, they were like, no, it felt like the walls were shaking. I missed that part. So we all had a similar karma to experience an earthquake, but the individual experience was unique. Therefore, we say collective karma, but it doesn't mean it's exactly the same karma. Okay. So yeah, very hard to say what is karma and what is not, but definitely about impermanence, we can say that. Then about impermanence and emptiness, they're not karma. Then there was Albert, he mentioned 4 types of permanent phenomena. He cited Jeffrey Hopkins' Meditation on Emptiness. Oh, what's going on? He cited Jeffrey Hopkins' Meditation on Emptiness. Spooky. And which is actually a really good book. I can only recommend it. It's an older book. It has been around forever. Like when I first came to McLeod in like the early 90s, they had that book. In 1990, they had that book already. That was one of the few Dharma books and really good. And not everyone likes Jeffrey Hopkins' style, but I love his style because everyone who reads his books really knows philosophy well. I mean, if you talk to someone, because it's so exact, it's so precise, that even though they don't end up speaking, I don't know, Shakespearean English after reading his book, I mean, sure, some of the terminology is just weird, but still I think his books are incredible. And so one of them is Meditation on Emptiness. So Albert quoted him, like he's saying, well, uncompounded space, right? Uncompounded space is a permanent phenomenon. For instance, in the Abhidharma literature, they mention uncompounded space, which is just the lack or the absence of obstructive contact. I can move my hand. I'm not talking about the space I can see right in front of me, but I'm talking about the fact I can move my hand. That is because there is no obstruction. And that is also called space. Well, in English, it's called uncompounded space. In Tibetan, they have different words for the space you can see and the uncompounded space. They have different words in Tibetan altogether. In English, you say impermanent space and permanent space. And that's a little like, what? You've got a permanent space and you've got an impermanent space? That's weird. But yeah, not to forget, we're just using the same word in this case. But yeah, absolutely, it's uncompounded space. That's the first type. And then the second type is what's called analytical cessation. Analytical cessations are cessations, for instance, when you eliminate the afflictions for good. You totally eliminate. Like a proper cessation of any of the afflictions, anger and so forth, is called analytical cessation. Why? Because you apply analysis in order to then, through analysis, how do phenomena really exist? And eventually you come to an understanding, a realization of how they exist, and that direct understanding of how phenomena really exist is able to eliminate the afflictions. However, there's another type that's called non-analytical cessation, which is also, and here he talked about like elephants not coming into the room. Oh, no, I don't know. It's not about that. It's actually about temporarily removing some of the objects of elimination. Temporarily. One example, I looked at what Jeffrey Hopkins, the example he used, which is not a classic example, but it works well. He said, like, when you're really preoccupied and you can't think of your hunger, so your desire for food, like the affliction that may otherwise arise in your continuum, well, temporarily that affliction doesn't arise because the causes and conditions are not there. You don't pay enough attention to the situation, excuse me, to your hunger and so forth. Therefore, there's no desire for food. But there's more of a classical or more traditional explanation. For instance, when you reach a certain level on the path, you're no longer reborn in what's called the lower realms. The realms are like the preta beings, the animal realm and so forth. But that is only because the causes and conditions can no longer arise. You haven't really overcome that. You haven't eliminated that for good. Just the causes and conditions are not there. That's a non-analytical cessation when basically certain causes and conditions are missing for certain objects of elimination or certain things that we try to overcome in order to become liberated or awakened. And then the fourth one is emptiness. Okay. Then Ella's, which reminds me, Hella's message saying that to read from time to time what's written in the discussion group. She's totally right. So today I'm better prepared. The phone is like the screen is on. I can actually see when people post things in the group. If they want to, there's following online if they want to contribute. Then the next one was Venerable Gyaltsen Hamo's message about life force. Well, actually, sok in Tibetan, so, sanar soka, no, sarata sanar soka sok. So that's the life force in Tibetan. I just gave you the Tibetan spellings for those who know Tibetan, but you know the spelling anyway. Well, it depends on how you translate that word, life force. Different people translate it differently. Sometimes they just say life or vitality. So when you give up your life for the Dharma, you actually use that word. You give up your soul for the sake of the Dharma. So then it would be life. But then life force, when it's explained, actually, for instance, in the Abhidharma literature, it says it acts as the support for both warmth, physical warmth, and consciousness, which is why plants are not said to have soul. They don't have a life force because they don't have that warmth and consciousness. I mean, strictly speaking, I don't know, we've had that discussion, do plants have consciousness or not, but the way it is described. So depending on which view you follow, if you say, yeah, they do have consciousness, they have a mind, they can become liberated and so forth, then you would have to say they have a life force. But if not, then you wouldn't say that they have a life force. According to the Abhidharma literature, so it acts as the support for both warmth and consciousness in the realms where you have a body, and it only acts as a support for consciousness in those realms where you don't have a physical coarse body. Okay. And then in the Kalachakra teachings, there's a text called The Beautiful Ornament of the Kalachakra Teachings, which is a tantric text. In there it says, actually, so it says literally in the Kalachakra system regarding the inhalation and exhalation of breath residing in the 6 great upper and lower energy channels in the body, even according to common worldly consensus, when inhalation and exhalation cease, people say his breath has ceased, he's dead, or they are dead. Therefore, inhalation and exhalation is called life force. right? So the fact that you're breathing, your inhalation, exhalation, and the person who stopped breathing, is that their life force, well, strictly speaking, just stopping, when you stop breathing, you're not really dead, but that is the way out of, or that is the way moving away from having a soul, having a life force. Okay, that was just something I wanted to mention. Venerable Jensen Hammer also talked about harming the body and harming the mind, harming the eye. I thought that was really important. So when you harm your body, when someone harms your body, and this is where we got to the self and the aggregates, that whole discussion that went on for a really long time. We have a mind and body called the aggregates, and we have an I. What is the relationship between the two? That was the main part of the discussion. Last time we talked about, for instance, people who have like this disassociation, feeling like their mind or their body doesn't belong to them. That is not something we're innately born with. It is, I wouldn't say disease, but it is an impairment, definitely a mental impairment, a mental problem. But it's not something innate, it's acquired. We're not born, well, unless we're born with that because it's part of some mental problem, but usually people are not ordinarily born with that sense. There's definitely a strong sense of separation, but not in every moment. I don't think even if you have that particular condition that you feel like your body doesn't belong to you, because I'm sure there are times when someone hits you and you feel like the person has hit me. Now, what we need to remember here, this whole discussion mustn't be confused with the way our I and our aggregates relate to each other conventionally, in reality, on a conventional level, and the way we mistakenly believe they relate to each other. There's a huge difference. And sometimes the discussions, I'm not really sure, are you talking about how it in actuality is, or are you talking about how we perceive it? So now, when it comes to the way we ordinarily look at ourselves, which is full of mistakes, not all the time, but especially when someone harms us. If someone hits my body, I feel like I was hit. So I'm identifying very strongly with my body. So my sense of I, innately, it's not that the I is totally separate from the body. That would be an acquired view. That would be a view that we mistakenly could have, but we were not born with that. Ordinarily, there's a sense, if someone does something to my body or to my mind, they do it to me. In that we identify in that moment strongly my body and the I, kind of seeming to be the same thing. So we're not really thinking, we don't have a philosophical mind in that moment, oh, are they one entity or separate? No. I mean, anyway, if that inherently existent I existed, the way it appears to us, it would have to be either identical with mind and body or separate. There's no other way. And we'll discuss that further as we continue. So anyway, having said this, yes, so when harming the body, you harm the mind. There's a very strong sense that that is the case. Now the question is, are mind and I one entity or not, in general? And the answer is yes. They are one entity. One entity doesn't mean identical. It means to be of one nature. For two things to be of one nature, by definition, they're not identical. Because they're always separate, two separate things. But to be of one nature means either they are synonymous. They're synonymous. So synonymous doesn't mean the same, doesn't mean identical. Synonymous means they appear slightly differently to the mind, but they refer to the same thing. For instance, we talk about phenomena being impermanent and phenomena being produced by causes and conditions. Those two are synonymous. Those are synonymous. So therefore, they appear differently to the mind. They refer to the same thing, but they're not identical. That's an important distinction. And there are many things like that. So there's that. And then, what was the next part? Oh, okay, so they're one nature. These two things, that the I and the mind are of one nature, but not because they are synonymous. Of course, obviously, the I is not the mind, and the mind is not the I. But how are they connected? That was the whole discussion. Now, mind and body are not said to be of one entity. They're not said to be of one entity. And even if you think about the moon, well, your body doesn't go to the moon, but your mind doesn't go to the moon either. It's just the object of the mind, right? But despite that, never mind about that. But mind and body, so your mind is in that body, in the body right here. That's where it's located, karmically located. In some rare occasions, it could leave the body, but ordinarily, it's pretty much located here, especially the sense consciousnesses. And so that being the case, mind and body, Doris said, yeah, mind is matter. No, mind is consciousness, is non-physical, while the body is matter. Therefore, they cannot be of the same entity. But then you could argue the I is not matter, the body is, but the I and the body are of one entity. So they're of one nature. When you said and that was a very good argument actually, but when you debate it, you said that mind and body are not of one entity. First you said they are, and then you said, well, they're not, because mind is consciousness and the body is matter or is physical. But then the I is not said to be matter, but the body is. And still the body is a part of the mind.
The body is a part of the I.
Part of the I, sorry, not part of the mind. Part of the I, sorry, I misspoke. So it's part of the I, the self, the person. So person means, from my perspective, it's the I. From your perspective, it's you. But we could all agree this is a person, you are a person. And our mind and body are part of us as a person. Now, I realize there's one difficulty when we use the word part. Because oftentimes people understand part to mean a spatial part, a physical part. But in Tibetan, the word has a different meaning. Like any feature, any characteristic is said to be a part of that phenomenon. For instance, the fact that I'm impermanent is a part of the person. It's a part of it as well. Therefore, parts don't necessarily have to be like spatial parts. The body is a part of my I, but so is my mind. And so are all other features that I possess. And they are inseparably linked in the sense that we say they are of one nature. So all that's what the texts very clearly express. But then it becomes quite complicated. First of all, what does it mean to be a part of something? How do you define being a part of something? Does it have to be inseparably linked? Well, what about my hair? Is that a part of the I? I can cut off my hair anytime, It's not like... But then you would argue, well, but then you're not the same person. First you had hair, and now you're a bald person. But then I could argue, if I was married and I had a husband, if my husband died, and my husband is not a part of me, but I label wife on the basis of that husband. And when the husband dies, I'm no longer a wife, I'm a widow. So I've lost my identity in that sense, right? Because, you see, it's like my object, on the basis of another person, I would label brother, sister, daughter, or in this case, wife, right? So here it's a perfect, or if I were, as a daughter, if my parents die, then I'm an orphan. I don't know whether you use that for adults, but strictly speaking, I'd be an orphan. I'm no longer, well, am I still a daughter? I guess depends on the conventions. But the point I'm trying to make is, what does it mean to be a part of something? Do I stop existing if that part is gone? And I was thinking, what about the clothes we possess? We went on about possessing something. Okay, yes, absolutely. You can possess something that is a part of you, and you can possess something that is not a part of you. Tomer cited Acharya Chandrakirti's text talking about the cow, right? The cow may feel like it's a part of you, but of course, conventionally, you wouldn't say it's a part of you. Why not? Well, because the cow can die and you're still there. What about the clothes we wear? Because part of our identity may be to be elegant. And then if someone takes away your clothes and gives you some rags to wear, you've lost your identity. I mean, you're a different person, right? You're no longer elegant. So are these clothes part of your identity? It feels that way. So you see, like the moment you start debating, how do you exactly define something being a part? Basis of labeling is difficult. Basis of designation. We've just heard, so what is the basis of designation? It's a part of you. Okay, but what does basis of designation actually mean? On the basis of that, I label, for instance, my cousin, my mother. I'm a daughter on the basis of my mother and my father. I'm a sibling on the basis of my siblings. I'm a sister on the basis of my siblings, and so on and so forth. So are they all part of me? No. But I can only share with you what it usually says in the text, and then there are endless debates, of course. So think about it. Something I would like you to think about. It's gone again. Hella posted something. No, but Hella, it's very good that you said that. I'm glad that you, even if you didn't address me, you should address me because it's my responsibility to read it. I was very grateful that Hella actually said that. Just as I was very grateful to Ellen, and I hope he continues doing that when I'm off topic, telling me, are you not a little bit off topic? Okay. So I keep him in mind, and so I'll keep it contained. All right. So these are a few things to think about. Number one, what does it mean to be a part of something? How would you define that? Keep in mind the clothes, other people in relation to whom we're labeled, hair, clothes, all that, right? So what does it mean to be a part? And therefore to be of one nature. What does it mean? This is a very important concept, to be of one nature. Two things are one nature. The table is of one nature with its parts. And still you could chip away at one side of the table and you would still say you're at the table, even if that part is gone, right? It's not the same kind of part. And then you go back to the clothing. I've put on different clothes. I'm not the same person any longer. Were these clothes a part of me? I'm not talking about the way we feel. Oh, I can't live without my clothes. No. But the way we would philosophically determine what it is. Okay. Anyway, that should be enough for something to reflect on. And so please keep the discussion going if you want to. But even if you don't keep it going, it doesn't matter. It's kind of, you have to type it all. And even if we record it, you have to still check it. I mean, if you use like a way to just record your messages so that they come out as written messages, whichever way you choose, but it still requires some effort. But the point is really reflect on it yourself, because it's very, very important. If you think about it, in trying to understand what the self is, how the self exists, yes, merely labeled on the basis of the aggregates. Someone called N, I don't know her full name, said it at the very end, kind of nicely summarized it, but still, yes, merely labeled, but what does it mean still to be a basis of interpretation? What is the relationship to the I? Is it a part or not? Okay.
Krishna?
Yes.
Is product a part of impermanent?
Is being a product a part of impermanent? Oh, this is something. Yes, someone said the I being a mother and the I being a sister, those are part of the I. Does being part of something mean, can it mean being a part? Like the thing is, like we have a part and a whole, right? We distinguish usually, this is also something that came up, a whole, part. In Tibetan they say part possessor, which is an awkward word in English, part possessor, that which possesses the parts, right? But actually what it means is a whole. It means a whole, actually. That's a good translation, W-H-O-L-E. Not a whole, but a whole. I hope I say it correctly. So the whole of a thing. Therefore, the question is impermanent? If being a product is being a product part of being impermanent? And is being impermanent a part of being a product? So are the two, a whole and its parts, not contradictory? Right? Are a whole and its parts. Parts means constituents, basically. Not in the political sense, but in the sense of like, yeah, being a part of something. So can the parts be also the whole and the whole be the parts? In the Tibetan, in the text, usually they say no. One of the arguments that you find in the text on Madhyamika, if the self were all 5 aggregates, that would be contradictory because the self is the whole and the 5 aggregates are the parts. And being the whole and being the parts are contradictory. That's one of the arguments you find in the texts. If all mind and body, if I ask you what is the self, and you were to say it's all of the 5 aggregates, there are certain problems with that. A different problem is if the self is sick, then all the parts of your mind and body have to be sick. Or if I say, I think about the self, I have to think of all the parts of the self. Or if I see a person, if I say Sina, I have to see everything about her because she's all her parts, which is impossible. So that's one contradiction, saying that you are your mind and body, all of it. Usually we say the I is merely labeled on the basis of any of the aggregates. It can be on the basis of all, but it doesn't have to be, which is why Venerable Gyaltsen Lhamo very nicely said, when one part of your body does something, we say the eye does, but that doesn't mean your feet have to do the same thing. So if your nose smells at a flower, your feet don't have to do the same thing, because in that moment, as you're smelling at the flower on the basis of your nose, you label I, just on the basis of that. So going back to Tomea's question, therefore, after everything I've said, is it really a part of that? Is the I that is a mother a part of the I, or is it not synonymous with that? I mean, if the I is the same, if the I happens to be a mother, right? If there is a person who's a mother, a person who's a sister, so that person and the person who's the mother and the person, they're synonymous. So which one is the whole and which one is the part? So similarly here, we can say, I think it was Albert, he said, different moments in time, yesterday's I, today's I, they're part of the entire I, which encompasses all these moments. That's true, because they're not the same. All these moments in time. When we think about the I, we think of a continuum. We're not just thinking of the I right now, do we? I went to the market yesterday. I'm talking about I in general. I will go tomorrow again, and I went yesterday. So implied by that is that I'm thinking of a continuum that spans over, I don't know, years. If I'm more specific, then I could specify I right now, okay, but usually I covers yesterday's I and today's I and so forth. It covers it, but it's not the same. So these different instances of the I are part of the I. Does that make sense? It's all very complicated, I realize, but if we want to understand again, on the basis of what is the I labeled, who do we feel like we are as a person, like our sense of identity? It's made up of different moments in time, especially in the past. Especially the past, everything we experienced, what we remember at least, that's part of our identity. Okay, so what would you say? Is being a product part of impermanence? In the strictest sense of the way part. I mean, I'm a part of the human race or something, or I'm a part, my study is a big part of me. That's a different way of using the word part of. Oh no, with the human race, that's a proper way of using it. But my study is a big part of me or something. My study is done, it's a big part of me. So there's a looser way of using the word part of. But in the strictest philosophical way, whole and part Is being a product part of being a permanent?
I think not. It's synonymous.
Yeah, it's synonymous.
There's no problem of who is the whole and who is the part.
Yeah, exactly. How do you decide which one is the whole and which one is the part? So part is something that constitutes that thing, but it's not that thing. And a part is something that together with other constituents or other parts make that whole. That's how it's used in the strictest sense of the word, in the philosophical sense.
Could you say that the whole is not really dependent on the parts also?
The whole is not dependent on the part. Could you say that? If you have 8 pieces of cake, isn't the whole cake dependent on each of the 8 pieces of the cake?
But if you cut your hair,
That was the whole discussion I had. But what about my head? You know, there are certain things. It depends.
Actually, I lost 2 fingers. Yeah, I use it very often in meditations.
Oh yeah.
To see whether the body is me or how. Yeah?
Right.
So the logic is that okay, if I lose some limbs,
Yes.
then if the body is me, I should become smaller or different.
Right. Yes.
It doesn't feel like that at all.
No, so Alan is saying he lost 2 fingers and he uses that a lot in meditation. And so just what's his sense of identity? Actually, if it was such a big part of him, he should have become smaller. But that's not how it feels at all. I just repeat the question for everyone listening.
I think there's actually no difference in identity.
There's no sense of less difference.
No difference. I don't feel that I became smaller, different, or anything. There's certain things I can't do.
Yeah, but that's the question. That's what I'm saying. Okay, I'm not answering that, Alan. I don't want to answer it. This is your homework, basically. So what does it mean to be part of something? Because we know there are more existentially important parts. My whole head, right? My fingers and my hair. Yeah, absolutely. Right? Important for survival and so forth. But why is something still a part? Is it still a part or not? How do you determine? Very difficult. But anyway, food for thought.
Can I ask you last thing?
Yes, one last thing.
If 2 things are one entity,
If 2 things are one
does it
entity.
mean they necessarily be either synonymous or part and whole?
Oh, if 2 things are, yes, this is like a discussion that comes up a lot. If 2 things, what does it mean to be a one entity? If 2 things are one entity, do they have to have a relationship such that one is a part of the other, or the 2 are synonymous? Yeah. It's a little bit difficult. For instance, they say that mind and mental factors are one entity. A main mind and the mental factors, they're one entity. But are they really one is a part of the other? Yeah, you would have to say they're a part of the other. I guess you would have to say the mental factors are part of the main mind. But it's a little difficult. That's the whole. No, but then again, very hard. No, you can't say they're a part of it. It's not like the main mind is the whole that encompasses all of them. Unless you define it in a specific way. How do you define the main mind? It's made up of mental factors. Yeah, maybe if you think of it that way, as it's made up of all these mental functions, then it's okay. Then you could say they're part and whole. So I don't know. Yeah, usually that's the relationship that people say, exists between the 2, if they're one entity. But there's always room for debates and finding other examples that don't fit that. For instance, the 2 truth, they're of one nature. But of course it means something very specific. It means the table and its emptiness. And again, the emptiness of the table is a part of the table. It couldn't exist without its emptiness. So sorry, this is very philosophical. I don't know whether I bore you with this, but basically when you study philosophy, when you study this, it's part of it. It's the fabric. It's the foundation of all this. And a lot of things make more sense. When you hear part, that's what they talk about. Okay, great. Let's go back to the text though. What page did we get to last time?
177.
Pardon?
177.
177. Ah, yes, right. Thank you. Okay, someone posted a message, but I won't have time. That's really long. Oh, no, that's not the one. No one posted anything.
To one part that you mentioned earlier.
Can we leave it until the time of question? I mean, Okay, go ahead quickly, but then let's move on.
No, it was regarding karma. You said that the karma is our experience and the environment. Is it the experience of the environment or the environment?
Yeah, that's a good question. That's so difficult. His question is, I said, karma is the experiences we have, but then we also talk about the environment being produced by karma and afflictions. But is that the same? Even if it's produced by karma and affliction, does that mean we're talking about it being a karmic result, or just being produced by karma and the actual experience of the environment, that is the karma? And some would say it's mainly the experience, but it's also that which you experience, because you can't experience the beauty of the environment if there's no environment. So, and what our minds perceive, you can't separate the experience. Like, what is the environment anyway? What is the environment, the world around us? What we particularly perceive, or what's out there which we don't perceive? I mean, what do you experience? You only experience what you perceive. So the environment, that is your reality. I keep saying that reality is the sum of everyone's reality. Reality is the sum of everyone's reality. I mean, the way we perceive reality, just from the point of view of modern physics, doesn't exist out there. I mean, we know there are pressure waves and light waves and all that. So colors, etc. It's a very unique experience. So when I experience environment, it comes with a certain shape and color. Does that color exist out there? No, they're just light waves using, modern physics kind of terminology. Am I using the right word? Light waves? Okay, thank you. So they're just light waves. That green that I think is so pretty, I experience a beautiful environment. I'm so happy to see all that green. That's the experience. I have a pleasant experience. I do see green. Does the green exist externally just the way I perceive it, in the same way as I perceive it? No, it doesn't. So you can't really separate the environment I experience, the environment I see, and on the basis of which I experience pleasure. Can you?
Which is a product of your mind.
Which is a product of my mind.
Then you're a Chittamatra.
Then I'm Chittamatra. No, I'm not Chittamatra. I'm not a mind-only school, because I'm not saying there's only mind. You see? But what my teachers always said was this. Don't neglect the mind-only school. Study the Chittamatra school well, because we never move away philosophically from as far from the Chittamatra school as we may expect. When you study the Chittamatra school, you're thinking, it's just the Chittamatra school. It's like the Prasangika is so different. But then, what I just said, that is totally acceptable in the Prasangika, but that sounds very Chittamatra. So there's a lot of aspects that the Chittamatra school would accept, a lot of Chittamatra aspects that the Prasangika school would accept, but it's still not full Chittamatra. It's so difficult. So difficult. Okay. Anyway. It's not supposed to be easy, that's why we spent so much time on this. All right, so 177, we got to page 177. We discussed the 16 aspects of the Four Noble Truths. Okay, it's part of the first four truths. The first truth, so what is the truth of suffering? Here it's explained to be our five aggregates. Our five aggregates is the truth of suffering. Does that make sense? It's not suffering. It's, what is it called? Pervasive conditioned suffering. It's pervasive conditioned suffering. So any kind of trouble we experience because we have this mind and body. It's pervasive in that sense. It's fragile. Our mind and body are fragile. Anything could happen anytime. And even the experiences that we believe to be blissful from the perspective of a liberated being, they're still in the nature of suffering. They're ridiculous. They're not really happy. For us, they're incredible happiness, but an arhat would say, "Oh, this is ridiculous. This is not happiness. This is suffering from my perspective." Anyway, having said all this, so the five aggregates, they are the basis, or they are the truth of suffering, and we've learned their four characteristics, which is they're impermanent, they are in the nature of suffering. So they're not pure and they're in the nature of suffering. Then there are selfless and empty. So they don't possess a permanent, partless, independent self, and they don't possess what's called a self-sufficient, substantially existent self, which is another way of saying it's some owner, which is the I that owns mind and body. Conventionally, we do say the self is the owner and so forth, but not in that absolute way in which that can be misperceived. Okay, so 4 characteristics when it comes to the 5 aggregates, which are truth of suffering. And then what about the causes? Now, there are wrong views that are counteracted, certain wrong views that are counteracted by understanding the truth of the origin of the Four Noble Truths, what's called the truth of the origin. In particular, the 4 aspects of this truth of the origin. So, number 1, the first aspect is called cause. It's a cause. So what are the true origins? Contaminated karma and afflictions. They're responsible for all our trouble, our afflictions. Our root misconception of reality, ignorance, root misconception of reality, and then arising from that, remember we talked about misperceiving the I, then believing the I to be more precious and more important than everyone else. And from there, in relation to that self-centered mind or that attachment to the I and mine, then arise all the other afflictions. Then they give rise to certain contaminated actions. And these are the causes. They are the cause because they're the root of suffering. Understanding this counteracts the wrong view that suffering has no cause. Is that a view we may also hold? Yeah, we basically, sometimes in the West in particular, the way we were brought up, it's all random. Either God made it, but does God really bring suffering? Yeah, I guess some people believe that, right? Like losing someone near to you or something, this idea God has taken a loved one, so God created suffering in that sense. I don't know. I wonder how far it goes in the sense of like, if you're a Christian believer, for instance, would you say every suffering comes from God? Right? Or from my own mistakes?
Yeah, trial.
Pardon? Trial. Yeah, but if I rob a bank and I'm being caught, does that suffering also come from God? Yeah, right. That's okay. There's natural consequences. Pardon?
That's the idea of the wrath of God.
The wrath of God. Oh, so God punished me because I made a mistake. Oh, so when I do things that are wrong, it's the wrath of God. I'm being punished through the police and what have you. And if I haven't done anything wrong, then it's a trial, right? So God is testing me, seeing how strong I am, helping me. Yeah. So, but that would be if you have followed a certain religion. Now, if you don't follow, if you're an atheist, you just wrote that, Tommy?
But don't really.
Mental power.
Is that for you? I'm sorry.
Are you listening or you're writing? No, I'm kidding. Oh, no, okay. You could have said that. No, never mind. It's fine. It's good. Anyway, so the point is here, we may have a sense that suffering arises from nothing. It's just random. It's a coincidence. It's random, basically. So that would be, of course, from a Buddhist point of view, although it's not God, but it's our own actions that create our experiences. Unfortunately, wouldn't it be nice if I make a mistake now and experience the result right away?
Yeah, this would be good.
Wouldn't that be great? Oh, we'd be so much safer. But it's with anything, you eat the wrong kind of food, you don't become violently sick right away. Maybe 20 years from now, you have high blood pressure and high cholesterol because you, ate the wrong kind of food for years. Wouldn't it be nice you eat that, fast food for a week and you got high blood pressure and everything? That would be so much better if you'd be much more careful about how we eat, whether we exercise or not. If you don't exercise, you feel sick the next day.
But that's what parents do with their children, no?
Pardon?
That's what more or less parents do with their children when they behave not in a wished manner. They give them small consequences.
Okay, so you're saying this is parents would punish their children right away if they make a mistake. Yeah, and that's sensible, because otherwise if they punish them 10 years from now, that'd be annoying. You don't even remember, and it wouldn't make sense. So actually that way of learning a lesson is a good thing, but unfortunately karma doesn't work that way. It's often over many lifetimes. That's why it's so difficult to understand. It's really hard to understand. It's the subtle workings of karma. One of the main concepts in Buddhism, and it's extremely subtle. Yeah, very interesting. But anyway, but there's a sense there's no cause. For example, followers of the non-Buddhist Indian Shavaka. So many of these views here, some of them are held by some of the non-Buddhist Indian philosophy, non-Buddhist Indian schools, but actually that's why we're studying them. We hold them as well. I keep saying, nowadays the West, they're all Chavakas. Most people in the West are Chavakas. Chavakas, what is the meaning? Lokayata, they're sometimes translated as Lokayata, sometimes translated as Chavakas. I don't know the actual meaning of the word Chavaka. Do you know? No. Gyangpemba. Yeah, Gyangpemba. I mean, Gyangpemba. So that which benefits afar. That I know, but I don't know what it exactly means in the sense of their view. Tsotongwa, Gyangpemba. Yeah. In Tibetan, it's translated exactly in that way, like Gyang as in like far, Pemba. I forget, I remember, I knew it once and I forgot. But never mind, their view is basically that unless you can see it, it doesn't exist. Unless you can see it, it doesn't exist. Therefore, liberation doesn't exist. Reincarnation doesn't exist. Suffering arises without causes. Because suddenly you have a headache and there's nothing you can see that gave rise to that. Okay, so maybe they would say, okay, because, I don't know, I ate the wrong food and so forth, but karma is definitely not not part of their outlook. So they're also sometimes called nihilists. They assert things, and that's a little bit absurd, like that's how the Buddhists explain it in the text sometimes, in some of the Buddhist texts. I think it's more symbolic. So they say that the sharpness of thorns and the roundness of peas, and like a pea that you eat, the roundness of a pea, the perfect roundness of a pea, or the sharpness of a thorn, or the colorful patterns on a peacock feather, doesn't have any cause. Doesn't have any causes. But of course, scientifically, there are causes. Why is a pea round and why is a thorn sharp? I mean, there's certain processes that give rise to the development of these objects. But I think it's rather, for instance, we say in the West that I have a certain temper because of my DNA. Because my dad has a temper and I have a temper, and we assume, we don't know 100%, but we assume, oh, that's, or the color of my hair. We can definitely assert that comes from the DNA I was given. But why was I given that DNA? Why did I get that set of chromosomes and my sister didn't? That's random. Does that make sense? That's random. Do you have any answer to that? No, they just came together. But from a Buddhist point of view, it's karma. That I was given that I have that particular DNA versus the DNA of my siblings, which is different. Right? So this is where it comes down to, the sharpness of thorns and so forth. It's not so much about these temporary causes. Yes, absolutely. We have a certain DNA, chromosomes, but where does it come from? It's random. From a Buddhist point of view, absolutely not. My actions in the past determined the kind of DNA I have in this life, and not even that is fixed. Despite people's DNA. This is so fascinating. The power of the mind is incredible. There's so many examples of that. I mean, you have identical twins. One is a genius in one thing and the other one isn't. All DNA? I don't think so. They have very similar DNA. They have very similar DNA. And still they develop differently. They have different fingerprint, that's for sure. But despite the similarity, they sometimes have totally different character. And then we have nature, nurture. Nature versus nurture. So nurture, okay. Right side of the crib, mathematical genius, left side of the crib. I mean, like, come on, that's a little far-fetched, isn't it? So very difficult. Or other phenomena there are. I mean, I find that very, very fascinating, of people who use their mind in a particular way. I remember I shared that with some of you in the past about the nuns study, Christian nuns study. Have you ever heard of that? Yeah, it's a fascinating project. There are some nuns, there's a particular order, Catholic order, yeah, in the US, and they're very socially active. So they're nuns, these particular nuns, I forget what they're called. I forgot. I mean, if you put in Christian nun study, it'll pop up right away. So they don't do it now. Otherwise you get distracted. No, but anyway, you can do it at home. So the point is, there are these nuns, and they did this nun study, and so they're very active, and they practice compassion, and they're active in the community. And one of them, there were some neuroscientists who approached one of the oldest ones. She was probably also the abbess of that group of nuns, and said, when you pass away, can we examine your brain? And she's like, sure, no problem. So she offered her brain to science. And so did quite a few others of these nuns. And they found these nuns, they were as bright as a, what do you say, bright? Bright as a button. Bright as a button. Yeah, bright as a button. They were bright as a button. They were so clever and everything. Very good memory, very active. And many of them had brains totally destroyed by Alzheimer. Isn't that incredible? They had the symptoms of Alzheimer in definitely the plaques of Alzheimer, yes. So they would say in another person, this person would have full-blown Alzheimer. If that person had been in different conditions, they would actually, they were basically surprised that this person was able to function. Because they said they've seen other brains. So you see, it's incredible that despite the physical aspects we're given, the DNA and everything, mind over body. Mind over body. And these nuns have shown it. And that's not true for everyone. But if you use your mind in a specific way, and of course in the virtuous kind of way, definitely you can overcome even these problems. And Buddhist mind training is full of these stories, basically. Something terrible happens to you, and you turn it around and use it as spiritual practice. Right? So anyway, having said that, I'm just saying that we are Charvakas at heart, in the sense that we're such materialists in the West, and we believe, basically, we very strongly believe that, yes, everything is physical, the brain is gone, we are gone, and unless we see those causes, there probably aren't any. So why are we given a certain DNA? Yeah, well, they do not accept an invariable relation between cause and effect. Some things, yeah, seed gives rise to sprout. But why we experience what we experience, very different. Observing, for instance, that some misers become wealthy, while some generous donors of charity become poor. Right? So this idea, short-term, only looking at short-term causal relations, not long-term. Yeah, some misers, some people who are really greedy and so forth, they become rich, and others who are very generous, they become poor. But that's not how karma works. We have to look at the long term, right? Yeah, you can eat a sandwich and feel really better. You can eat, I don't know, at McDonald's for the next week, and after that you feel actually better. You have more energy. It's possible, but that doesn't mean that there's a causal relationship. So just because you're a miser, you have a lot of money, that's not necessarily a causal relationship. So there may be a trigger. There may be a trigger, right? This is important because when we talk about karma ripens in dependence on triggers. And what triggers them, it's always a different matter. So someone has the karma to be imprisoned after a robbery, and the next person doesn't have the same karma. So therefore, in one case, the police catching them, the karma is ripens in the form of being imprisoned. In the other case, they can never get caught. Yeah. Or there's two people who both have the same karma to go to prison, but it doesn't ripen. In one case, it ripens by I don't know, the police seeing them. In the other case, they don't have that kind of karma to be seen by someone, and so therefore it doesn't break. So it's very, very complicated. You can have karma to become extremely rich without doing anything. But you can also have karma to become extremely rich working your butt off. So it's like, what is it? I don't know. Karma, therefore, is one of the most, of course, subtlest phenomena. Anyway, but a lot of people feel there are no causes to our suffering, to why we have a mind and body. It's just random. On this basis, they deny that suffering has a cause and instead claim that it arises naturally. Oh, that's also something. It's natural. Suffering is, problems are natural, a sense we cannot remove them. It's just part of our mind. Then there's the second characteristic, origin. True origins, such as contaminated karma and afflictions, are origins because they generate all kinds of suffering again and again. So it's not just that all our problems come from karma and afflictions, all of them. So the afflictions first, and then of course leading to certain actions that are influenced by these afflictions. In other words, the kind of suffering we give out, we get back, kind of idea. But it doesn't just happen once, it constantly happens. We have to understand it happens all the time. So it's not, and understanding this counteracts the wrong view that suffering has only a single cause. We like to simplify things all the time. We oftentimes blame just one person, right? They're responsible for our trouble, our parents. Very convenient. Our parents. Or someone else. Someone is the perpetrator. They're responsible. I remember after COVID was over, what were people doing? Finding the person to blame for COVID. You've got nothing better to do? I never found a single person. But anyway, so the sense that just a single cause, not understanding we're constantly creating new causes. Karma is not like one overarching thing that's now determining what's happening. Those are constant actions, and we constantly create new ones and therefore have constantly new experiences. For example, followers of the non-theistic Samkhya school, also a non-Buddhist school, assert that all physical phenomena, mind, suffering, and so forth, arise from a single entity known as the Prakti, Mula Prakti, so the fundamental nature. Or like in Christianity, possibly God, right? So all arise from those as an underlying source. So suffering is just a manifestation of that source. And again, although we may not have a view that there's this underlying fundamental nature, but every now and then we may also have a sense there's something, like my parents are responsible, right? Honestly, I have a very close relative. I don't think she's ever going to listen to this, but she believes all her problems come from my parents. Oh, now you know who this relative is. Never mind. My sister. She's so convinced. She's so convinced. She's never listening to this. So she's so convinced that all her problems come from my parents. That's it. She's very bright, and she is. So everything good in her life was her doing, and everything that's bad is my parents doing. 100% convinced. If I argue not like debate with her, she says, okay, no, that doesn't make sense. But it feels that way. And it always comes out. Very interesting. And she can't go beyond it because she can't change my parents. She can't change the past. So she's caught in that. Yeah. Strong producer. So true origins, such as contaminated karma and afflictions, are strong producers because they generate suffering powerfully. Okay, so understanding this counteracts the wrong view that suffering is produced by a creator God. Okay, so here it's kind of slightly different to the one before. I said one source, but here the text cites those believing in God. For instance, the non-Buddhist Indian Shaiva school and the Vaisheshika system. So just if you learn philosophy, you hear these names again and again. It's not so much about remembering this, but about the views they hold, and to check, are these views I may hold myself? So they hold that this world, living beings, happiness, suffering, and other phenomena are created by the god Ishvara. So they believe that Ishvara's mind is the primary or powerful cause of these phenomena. And again, that kind of view, it's the strong producer is not an entity such as a deity, but it is our own contaminated karma and afflictions. Very powerful. And we give it that power by constantly feeding into, depending on how we act, of course, but any kind of self-centered activity that harms others, very powerful. The more powerful our actions, the more powerful the result. Then number
What is
8.
Powerful production. I never got this. What is the difference between production and powerful production?
Yes, go ahead.
I think this one is related to the law of karma, that the results of karma increase because they increase exponentially. And it's very difficult to understand why that is the case.
So Venerable Genshin Hamo, I'm just repeating it for the camera. So Venerable Genshin Hamo says that she believes that it's powerful production because of like karma in particular, which multiplies. And it's very hard to understand why it multiplies. Why does it actually multiply? They sometimes say, well, a tiny seed can give rise to a huge tree. But that's one example, and it's not always true that every cause gives rise to, So in that way, every cause definitely always has many results. That's a very important principle in Buddhist philosophy. Every cause gives rise to many different results. And that would also account for a karmic result, basically, because it does so together with other phenomena. There's never just a single cause. And therefore, even if we talk separately of a particular cause, we can also say that there are always many, many results. So that could be one reason why things multiply, that every cause has many, many different results. But again, why is that true? You could ask again, why is that the case? It just is. Why does every cause have many, many different results? And so multiplying, when we talk about karma, because it gives rise to not just one experience, but many experiences. But the thing is, it multiplies over time. And that is the difficulty. Why it increases in strength. That is, so not just that it has many different results, but it also seems to kind of become more powerful. Yeah, exponentially grow stronger exponentially. Yeah.
And that's just one action of swatting a mosquito and then ending up in hell.
Yes. So squatting a mosquito, for instance, leading to hellish experiences, despite that tiny little action, which of course on the positive side is the same. So let's also remember that any kind, helpful, altruistic action can have great consequences in the past because it multiplies.
But a little bit of anger can destroy all your merits very quickly. So
yeah, but then you keep replenishing it with.
To clean out this little smashing of a mosquito, it's much more work.
It's much more work. Yeah, well, because our mind right now, it's true that accumulating virtue is so much harder than the other way around, but because our mind is controlled by the self-centered attitude, any kind of selfish action, which is usually non-virtuous, which is usually harmful, comes natural at this point in time. Yeah, absolutely. It's kind of like putting on weight is much easier than losing weight kind of idea, right? Yeah. But that's just our whole existence. Things that we don't want are much easier to achieve than the other way around. Yes, Ellen?
I asked this question both to Lingam Rinpoche and Samdor Rinpoche. They both gave the same
Samdor Rinpoche and Lingam Rinpoche, okay, yeah.
And they both gave the same answer.
What did they say?
Well, basically, because it's impermanent.
Ah, okay.
Yeah. And the fact that it multiplies, and that's both negative and positive karma, they multiply because it's impermanent. So the reason that the negative multiplies is because if you don't try to purify it, there is an aspect of acceptance of having done that negative action. And that is what feeds it.
Oh, so it's no, but it's not multiplying; it's being fed, basically. So it would strictly. Let me just repeat what Lin Rinpoche and Samdho Rinpoche both said. So saying that it's impermanent, any negative action or positive action, in both cases, it's impermanent.
The karmic seed which is left.
The karmic seed which is left, so that is accepted.
It's impermanent.
It's impermanent.
So it just like it's the same principle as if you're purifying negative karma, where you are applying the opponent powers. Yeah.
Okay, so it's
So
the
if
same.
you don't
Yeah.
do that, there is a kind of a mental acceptance of that negative action being okay.
But what about the positive actions? You see, the thing is, he's saying, okay, when you do
Exactly
some.
the same, because then you are kind of
Let me just make sure, because it takes too long for me to say it all over again. So let me just briefly update everyone who can't hear you directly. So you're saying that what Samdho Rinpoche and Lin Rinpoche have said is that because you leave a karmic imprint, let's say a negative action, you leave a karmic imprint on your mental continuum, and unless you purify it through the 4 powers, it'll continue as that imprint. And since there's a sense of acceptance, that feeds into that seed and therefore multiplies it. So then my question was, what about the positive one? You're going to answer that now. Okay.
acceptance and rejoicing. It's not like full-blown rejoicing, like, ha ha ha, I did this, I'm very proud of killing this person or whatever.
No, of course not. Rejoicing
But just
doesn't
the
mean that.
fact that you're not doing anything to purify it, there is an aspect of rejoicement in it. And it's the rejoicement part that makes the seed grow.
Okay, so you're saying there's an aspect of rejoicing in it, but if you forget it, you can't rejoice. If you forget the next moment you've done it, what about that? Because if you think, okay, that makes sense. If you know what you've done and you keep rejoicing, oh, well done, well done, well done, right? So then, of course, it would multiply, because with every rejoicing, a negativity, rejoicing, of course, is neither virtues nor non-virtues. It depends on what you rejoice in. If you rejoice in the virtuous action, it is a virtuous action. If you rejoice in the non-virtuous action, it becomes non-virtuous. So in that sense, therefore, here you're talking about rejoicing some negativity. But let's say you kill someone and you die, and you have no idea that you've done that. You're not rejoicing. You have no time. You get killed yourself. So you're actually going out and killing like 10 people, and number 11 cuts off your head. And so there's no time to rejoice. And then you're reborn and you don't know you've done that. How could you be rejoicing in that? It's not like, I've done all these negativities, let's rejoice. I'm not sure. I mean, this is just me debating. I mean, sorry, I'm not disagreeing. I'm just debating.
That's like a rejoicement, like I told you before, like, yes, I killed somebody, like that. It's just the fact that not doing anything to accept that it's a negative thing and to reduce the effect of that negative thing. Just the fact that you don't do that.
Yeah, understand what you're saying. So you're saying, so you're not doing anything to counteract it, and that makes it grow. But then the question sort of remains, why is that true with actions, and why is that not true with poisonous food, for instance? If you don't do anything to counter, you see, that's the same, we end up having the same question. Why is that true for karma? Why is it true if you don't do anything against it, that it multiplies, but it's not true for other things? You don't have to constantly fit into something for, like for poison, for instance. I mean, poison doesn't naturally kind of increase, even though you're not doing anything against the poison.
I don't understand what you mean with poison.
For instance, you have a poisonous food. So you have that poisonous food, but it slowly becomes less poisonous. It slowly disintegrates on its own, doesn't it? It's not like the poison increases as part of that potential of the food that it could kill you. And instead, or like when you take speed, the momentum of speed, like you push it, and then eventually that push, it will last for that long, but it will not. But karma seems to be like you push something and then it totally increases. So what about the what is it called, the law of motion? You apply a certain force, and equivalent to that force, something moves. But it's not like it's going to increase. Shouldn't it be the same then as well? Especially because there's nothing that obstructs it. I mean, if there was something to obstruct it, it'd be different. Yeah, well, but if there isn't like in space or something, eventually it will stop as well, wouldn't it?
Actually, even increase.
No, speed doesn't increase. It needs to have a cost to increase. What is the cost? Well, anyway, we can talk about physics, but there are lots of other examples where that doesn't work, and the question still remains, why is it particularly with karma, right? I mean, I don't know. I'm saying this is definitely a good answer. It explains it to that point. I mean, I wouldn't disagree with that, but for me, it's still a question remains. But I mean, it's not unusual because, of course, it's the settled working of karma. So I'm just debating the way I'm used to debating back, but yeah, still, it's definitely a step closer to getting a sense why it increases, yes.
Could it have something to do with the difficult to understand Prasangika point that cessation is a functioning thing?
Has it something to do with the Prasangika school point of view that a cessation is actually an impermanent thing? Or not the cessation? It's not a cessation that is an impermanent thing. It is the going out of existence of something, the ceasing of something.
When the action
The disintegration, yeah.
when the action ceases.
The action ceases, yeah. When you say cessation, it could also mean like, excuse me, the cessation of suffering. No, yeah. So the ceasing, yeah, the going, disintegrating of an action. I don't think those two are related. I don't think that karma multiplies because in the Prasangika school, the disintegratedness of something is impermanent. I don't think.
Right. But from a practical point of view, the important point is that we normally have the wrong view that time heals and that anything bad or good I've done, it decreases in time.
Yeah. Yes, that's true.
The important thing is to recognize actually these things are increasing over time.
Venerable Gyaltsen Lama, she's saying we have a sense that time will take care of things. Like time heals all wounds and so forth. And to a certain degree, there's something to it. I mean, over time you forget about it and, so it no longer, I mean, certain things you forget about, right? Like at the latest when you die, I mean, you lost people say you never overcome like the death of a child, right? It never gets better. It never gets easier. So I've heard that many times, and I don't have children, so I cannot relate to it emotionally, but it makes sense to me. But I remember thinking, but when you die, then that's it. You're not reborn suffering because of that loss. I don't think so. But you're right. In general, we have a sense that everything will just go away by itself. But that's not true for karma. Very true. That's the one thing we have to look out for. Because like we may forget we've done it, and other people may forget we've done it, but it doesn't forget. Oh, it's such a weird it's such a weird law. And it increases.
Which is why we end up inventing a God. It's God's fault, or it's the wrath of God.
Yeah, not just that it increases, it ripens much later. So then we can only explain it with God because I've been Mother Teresa my whole life and now I'm right? Yeah, so very, very difficult. Anyway, so strong production. Okay, so maybe because but it says karma and afflictions both because it multiplies. Yeah, maybe strong production, and I don't know.
Have you ever seen these evil children who have so much joy torturing little animals?
Of course, there are children, yes, they're psychopaths that are born as psychopaths, for instance, but that's probably because of tendencies in their previous life.
Yes, but
I could imagine.
Multiplying, no? The action itself is maybe just.
You see, when we talk about karmic actions, there's so many different types of actions that are actions that are karmic, or so many different karmic results. There are karmic results that fit the action. That something similar, that some similar tendencies fit the action in the sense that this has two aspects. One, in terms of your experience, something similar is experienced by you, or similar in terms of your tendencies. We create habits. With every action we perform, we create habits. So people like Mozart, that had these incredible abilities, well, they're certainly practiced music in such a way that it didn't harm others, that possibly benefited others. So that ability to do music from a very small age they were born with. And maybe in this life they're born as Taylor Swift or what have you, right? Who has certain talents and so. But then there's those, I'm thinking about, like serial killers, psychopath. I mean, fortunately they're very rare. But it's still, you're wondering, they're born sometimes in just ordinary families where all siblings just, non-violent and so forth, but they have these tendencies they want to kill. So again, these are karmic tendencies, actions from the past. But with the strong production, what I like about that, and honestly, I've asked this question. This is one of the questions you ask, 5 geshes and you get 5 different answers. They don't usually agree, not necessarily agree on this. And I don't even remember the answers correctly. I mean, I don't remember. But I'm wondering what, because Venerable Gyensen Ham was saying that strong production in the sense that it multiplies and that it lasts for a long time. That, like short-term causes can give short-term results. But karma doesn't work like that. It usually doesn't even ripen in this life unless it's a really powerful karma. Only very powerful karmas. So a medium-sized karma can ripen many, many lifetimes later. So that shows also a lot of force in a certain way, a power that it can last over these lifetimes. You would think it's the other way around. A powerful karma would last for a long time and it only ripens later. But it's the other way around. It's the powerful ones that ripen in this life and the less powerful ones in the next life. Why is that? So strong, maybe in I don't know. I really don't know. I mean, we shouldn't think about it too much because it just gives you a headache. It's that subtle working of, and that's not just true for the law of karma. If I were to argue with you, look at this sprout compared to the next sprout. One has a leaf that's 5 millimeter long and the other one's 6. What is the exact cause? It's just going to give you a headache. It's too subtle when it comes to cause and effect. Anyway, no answer, I'm sorry. But strong producer, I like Venerable Gyensen Ham's answer. I like that one. But I don't know. Condition. True origins such as contaminated karma and afflictions are conditions because they function as cooperative conditions for suffering. So not just as main causes, but they also serve as cooperative conditions. So we have main causes and we have cooperative conditions. Understanding this, understanding this counteracts the wrong view that something can be permanent by nature and yet undergo change. Okay, wait. Okay, true origins such as contaminated. Suddenly this counteracts the wrong view that something can be permanent by nature and yet undergo change. For example, the non-theistic Samkhya school or Samkhya system maintains that the fundamental nature is permanent by nature, yet nonetheless transforms into physical phenomena, suffering and other effects. Understanding that contaminated karma and affliction serve as cooperative conditions for suffering counteracts this view, since if something arises dependent on specific conditions, its cause cannot be permanent and must possess the capacity to produce that particular result. Yes, so this is also similar to the idea like there's a permanent God, that's the main cause, and then we are like cooperative conditions. We're just, the idea that still, if you want to win the lottery, God will be responsible for you winning the lottery, but you still have to buy a lottery ticket, right? There's this joke, someone praying to God to make them win the lottery, and one day God says well, buy a lottery ticket. So this idea, even in Christianity, that the main cause is God, but then the cooperative conditions are the ones we add to it, and God is permanent. Now, similar to the Samkhya school here, that fundamental nature, that is permanent, it gives rise to everything, but the cooperative conditions are accumulated by us, for instance, right? So that is also an interesting idea, an interesting idea in the sense that, do we look at reality like that? Do we believe there's an underlying permanent cause? For instance, when we think karma and believe karma is permanent, what is your view of karma? What is karma? What is karma? I mean, it is so misunderstood. So misunderstood. Karma really just means action. And we perform actions all the time. So when we say karma, 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 we're talking about the sum of all these different actions that in each moment, actions of the past give rise to experiences now. And we accumulate in response to those, or maybe not in response to those, new actions. And then these karmic actions, they exist for some time. I don't know, I insult someone. How long does it take to insult someone? 5 minutes. I'm done. But it leaves an imprint on my mind. That imprint is also changing. It is also changing. It doesn't stay like that in a non-changing way. In fact, it is affected by my actions on a daily basis. I may accumulate very strong negative karmic actions. I insult someone, and that leaves an imprint on my mental continuum. And then I generate, let's say, regret for that action, that specific action, or sometime later, having insulted someone, and I'm thinking, oh, I feel so sorry for ever having insulted someone. Then I accumulate a virtuous action, and I purify that karma. Even without applying all 4 powers, I can still, the most powerful way to purify negativities is through the 4 powers. But we constantly counteract action. So if I go out of my way and I do something really virtuous, it may naturally actually get rid of a negative karma. Or the other way around, I accumulate a lot of virtue and I get so angry and I keep steaming and like I'm just planning this retaliation for like hours, and I'm destroying all these positive imprints, right? There's a constant change and exchange. It's never the same. Yeah. So they do counteract each other. I mean, they do. Positive ones purify negative ones, and negative ones destroy positive ones. Okay. So therefore, they're definitely not permanent. All right, so that's about causes and conditions, understanding causes and conditions better. And if we really meditate on them, reflect, how do I look at causes and conditions? Do I find myself in them? In any of these views, whether called samkhyas or whatever fancy names, they're just human beings who, based on their own sense of what is reality, formulated certain systems. And for us, it's very helpful to learn about them and then compare them to reasoning and hopefully find exactly, well, it doesn't really work like that. And it's not about putting down another system, don't get me wrong, but just saying from a Buddhist point of view, well, it contradicts a certain logic. Okay. And then there is cessation. Yes. Oh, the microphone, thank you. Okay. And then there's cessation. So now we also, of the Four Noble Truths, we have what's called cessations. So the total removal of suffering by means of its antidote. It's possible to remove our suffering. So that is a cessation. Separation, that is the complete removal of suffering by means of its antidotes. That is a cessation because it constitutes the elimination of suffering. Understanding this counteracts the wrong view that there's no liberation from cyclic existence. So many people believe that. If I talk about liberation, like to some of my relatives, if they ask me, they're like, no way, impossible. It's part of it's in the nature of existence. It's good, actually, they say. Suffering is good because you can't appreciate. Happiness is only possible if you suffer, which is true for ordinary happiness. That's true. Our ordinary happiness is really just the absence of a worse situation. It's really like the absence of something worse. It's like if you've been really, really cold, stepping into the really hot sun, it feels like happiness, doesn't it? But if you stay in the sun, sooner or later it'll be too hot. You have to go back into the cold. That's our life. Right now we're like jumping from cold to heat to hot, heat to cold. We have to constantly jump back and forth because sooner or later it turns into something unbearable. But there is something to the idea that suffering, if I suffer today, I really appreciate the certain things tomorrow that I usually just take for granted. That I agree with. But of course, from a Buddhist point of view, you can go beyond these ordinary experiences of happiness and experience something so much greater. Okay. For example, followers of the Charvaka and Mimamsaka school, they assert that liberation is impossible. Why? Because the Charvakas maintain that the mind is produced from the elements, so it's made from the physical elements, and therefore deny rebirth. They don't believe in rebirth, and they definitely don't believe in liberation from afflicted state, from afflicted states of mind. So in other words, if you say like the mind is the brain, and the brain is very limited in its capacity, then you can never go beyond that limitation, right? You can never go beyond, and then you die. You've got a certain time with that brain, and then you die, and no way can you develop your mind. The Mimamsakas, on the other hand, they do accept rebirth, but hold that the obstructions to liberation, so that which prevents us from being liberated, like attachment, anger, and all the other afflictions, are in the nature of the mind. Right? Again, that's what people think in the West. It's natural to be angry. You can never remove anger. With this in mind, you wouldn't even attempt to. You would maybe try to reduce it, but never go beyond, go beyond that. All right, so therefore cessation, it's important to understand that they can be totally eliminated. They're not in the nature of our mind, and they definitely are not the same as our brain. Where's the anger in my brain? I can only see that a certain area is activated, but there's not like two guys boxing, kind of fighting with each other or whatever, whichever way I would imagine I would imagine anger to manifest. Anger is what we feel with our mind. That's anger. Okay.
There's some correlation in the brain.
There's a strong correlation. Yes, being related, even causation is possible in some cases, but not necessarily. In some cases, of course, feeling crappy, feeling tired may make you feel more angry, but there's no absolute certainty that you feel crappy, you get angry. You may in certain situations, so it could trigger that, but that's not the main cause. The main cause is in the mind, is the tendency to have anger. Yeah. All right, Sorry, I put it somewhere else. Okay. Pacification. A true pacification, such as the separation, that is the complete removal of suffering, is a pacification because it constitutes the elimination of afflictions. Understanding this counteracts the wrong view that certain contaminated states, what is the difference to before? Before it was the elimination of suffering is not possible. Here, that certain contaminated states constitutes, so here, the elimination of afflictions, that's what we're talking about. But some people may think that liberation means something different. It's not the elimination of afflictions, but the elimination of something else. So, for example, the non-Buddhist followers of the Jain tradition hold that liberation refers to a specific place above the various worlds, likened to an upside-down umbrella. I never understood that. Do they literally talk about that? They say there's a place like an upside down, okay. According to this view, when a person has exhausted all previously accumulated karma and no longer produces new karma, they go to this place and are considered liberated. From a Buddhist point of view, it's just the elimination of afflictions. You don't go out of existence as a person necessarily. So this is similar to other beliefs where it's like some kind of paradise that you may go to.
Well, most people believe just by dying you're liberated.
That's true. Yeah, most people believe through dying you're liberated, or not necessarily. Some see it as a loss and some see it as a liberation.
Well, they say R.I.P., that person's in heaven now.
And they rest in peace. I thought you meant like everything goes out of existence versus the Christian belief. Yeah, you're right, just death. No, not necessarily rest in peace. You want them to rest in peace, but they still have the hell realm. So don't necessarily...
Everyone goes to heaven.
That's what
or at least
Really?
dear one, our close family and so on. But when people want to commit suicide, that's
Yeah.
because they believe.
Yeah, that's the end of it. Exactly. Yeah, they have such problems that they believe if they kill themselves, that's the end of their problems. Yes. So I think it just depends on the person. Some people, they're so scared of death because they believe that's the end of everything and the good things. So I guess having to leave behind what we're attached to. But then others find it's a relief, yes. And then if you're religious, strongly religious, you follow, for instance, Christianity or Islam and so forth. I don't know about Judaism. You're not necessarily reborn in heaven, are you?
There is heaven and hell in Buddhism, and also sometimes some say rebirth, but I don't know so much.
Okay. Yeah, okay, so they possibly have heaven and hell. But yeah, exactly. So you have both, but usually you yourself are thinking you're reborn in heaven. Your close relatives as well. You never think grandma is going to be in hell. She's always going to be in heaven. You always meet them. Yes. So yeah, I think you're right. It depends on the person, but there is definitely a sense liberation is, your death is liberation. Yeah, can be liberation. Absolutely. But here, of course, okay, the Jains, what's the next one? So the next one is the satisfying state. A true cessation, such as a separation, that is the complete removal of suffering by means of its antidote. Here I'm citing the scriptures. I'm just translating what's in the scriptures, and it's repeating the same thing again, is a satisfying state. So this is different now, because the liberation that brings benefit and happiness. Understanding this counteracts the wrong view that certain states of suffering constitute liberation from cyclic existence. For example, the liberation asserted by the Samkhyas is such a state. According to the Samkhya school, through reliance on certain meditative concentrations, or in particular concentrations, a practitioner attains what's called the divine eye and uses it to observe the fundamental nature. And subsequently, all manifestations of the fundamental nature dissolve back into it, and it separates from the self. The self that remains is asserted to attain liberation. So basically, they use their ordinary self, and everything is kind of dissolved into that, but it's still, from a Buddhist point of view, if the kind of liberation they explained, where possible, you still remain the same, basically. You don't do anything with the affliction, so that would be, by definition, a samsaric state. Okay. Again, that is not the case. So if you just summarize what it actually means here, what cessation really means, so these 4 characteristics, you can summarize it, basically. It's the removal from all the afflictions. And it's the removal. What's the first one? So you overcome suffering. You overcome suffering because it's not on the nature of your mind. So you totally overcome that. Then the second is you do so by overcoming the afflictions. So liberation is really overcoming the afflictions. And then the third one is, what was the third one? No, I just said, wait, I'm getting confused. The third one, the third one is, yes, so there is no liberation in samsara. I mean, we also seek liberation in samsara all the time. We seek lasting happiness in samsara. We're obsessed about that, right? Like when suffering arises, we're so surprised. I tried everything to look for more happiness, especially like sometimes I think also when people get older, you're thinking, I've done everything right, I worked so hard, now I should be happy. And then they have problems and they're like, that's so unfair. So almost the sense you would have, now you've suffered enough, now you need to find some lasting happiness. And it's just not happening, right? Because we're looking for nirvana in samsara. Then the last one of the 4 with regard to cessation is definite release. So again, that kind of cessation, the removal of suffering and so forth, is a definite release because it's an irrevocable liberation. Oh yeah, that is also something that could be misunderstood, that there's a possibility you become liberated for some time, but you fall back from that. For example, the followers of the Samkhya school who possess clairvoyant abilities become aware that after they take to be after what they take to be liberation, they will undergo rebirth again in cyclic existence. So they conclude that liberation is reversible and that spiritual attainments can get lost. Why do you make an effort to become liberated in the first place? Isn't that frustrating? You can actually overcome all the afflictions, you can be liberated, but you can fall back from it. That reminds me also of Christianity. It seems like Adam and Eve were in a kind of paradise first. They kind of were liberated, and then they ate from the tree of, what's it called? The tree of wisdom? The tree of wisdom, right? They eat from the, at least, Eve, she tempted Adam. She can be blamed. No, I'm kidding. But the thing is, so basically, I don't want to say ate the wrong apple, but really did eat the wrong apple, literally. According to the story, it was the wrong apple. So then they were no longer liberated. And so there seems to also be a case when you can be, and then from a Buddhist point of view, impossible. That would not be liberation. Yes?
Due to not understanding emptiness, isn't it?
Due to not understanding emptiness. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so we may believe there's certain places that are better than others, but of course it's always part of samsara. Without understanding ultimate reality, as Genshin Hamo says, wouldn't be liberation.
Wisdom cannot get lost.
Pardon?
When you have realized emptiness directly, this will never get lost.
That's true. Once you realize emptiness directly. No, but sometimes we may even believe, even through our practice, if suddenly anger and certain states no longer arise, we may believe, oh, I'm liberated. That has happened. Or I've realized emptiness. But of course, we need to make sure, we had that discussion before, that we realize proper emptiness, actually. Okay, so for example, the followers of the Samkhya school. Now wrong views counteract by understanding the 4 aspects of the truth of the path. A true path, such as the wisdom directly realizing selflessness. So here is a path because it leads to liberation. Understanding that the wisdom directly realizing emptiness or selflessness is a path counteracts the wrong view that there's no path to liberation from cyclic existence. So again, before the Samkhyas, the Charvakas and the Mimamsakas, and many people in the West, of course, hold that liberation is impossible and therefore maintain there's no method, there's no path to liberation. But of course, it's realizing selflessness. Then there are the appropriate means. A true path, such as the wisdom directly realizing selflessness, is an appropriate means. Why? Because it serves as the direct antidote to the afflictions. And it counteracts the wrong view that a mind familiarized with selflessness is not an effective path to liberation. So first it was there's no path to liberation, and then the wrong view that selflessness itself is not an antidote. Because many followers of major non-Buddhist Indian philosophical systems assert a permanent partner's independent self. They do not accept selflessness. And we do in the West either. Oh my God, selflessness? You're kidding me. Right? In the West, people would totally agree. Selflessness is the solution. Being less selfish. Yes, people believe, but even that, sometimes people think you're stupid if you're not a little bit more selfish. Isn't that? Yeah. You're stupid. You're just going to suffer more if you're less selfish. So it's not seen as, even some parents possibly tell their children, don't show weakness, be strong, be selfish. Yeah. Okay, so that's appropriate means. And then the actualizing means. So again, with the wisdom directly realizing selflessness, that is an actualizing means because it is a pristine type of wisdom. It's a special type of wisdom. It's not just our ordinary type that directly experiences the final mode of existence of the mind. Or, in this case, the mind, I guess. Understanding this counteracts the wrong view that the mundane meditative absorptions of the form and formless realms or the ascetic practices of the 5 fires are paths to liberation. So there's certain practices that sometimes in some of the non-Buddhist systems, there are also these views that there are certain absorptions, meditative absorptions, which are great, they're amazing, but they themselves are not sufficient. They're very helpful to develop the wisdom realizing selflessness and so forth, but they fall short in eliminating what needs to be eliminated. And of course, there's certain ascetic practices. Here we just mentioned some of the non-Buddhist practices with the 5 fires, but in Christianity, what do you call that when you...
Flagellation.
Flagellation. So when you flagellate yourself, or you carry the Christ, the cross of Christ, and you go through all these hardships. Of course, it can be inspiring and all that, but not as a means to just overcoming suffering. Of course, from a Buddhist point of view, doing prostrations is also not, it helps. I mean, there's certain practices that are difficult, like doing a lot of circumambulations or even prostrating all the way around the Kora. Whoa, I did that once. That is the hardest thing. I couldn't walk for a week. Yeah, you do it all the way around, doing Sakadawa. You do it in the evening, and it was really hot, and you breathe in all the... And at that time, they still had all the beggars. There were all these beggars all the way around. So it's like pee and poo and everything. So you're going through there. It was such a hardship. Yeah, I never did it again. It is actually... I'm just so lazy. I'm so lazy. I do one thing once and never again. I've only been to Trion once. It was so difficult to get up to Trion. So I only did it once, and I only did the prostrations around one time. But the point is, this is actually really effective. I mean, there are people who do, there's actually a man who came all the way from Amdo here doing prostrations. And it's the mental attitude, of course.
All the way.
All the way. He had like a little carriage that he had with him, so he would do some prostrations, pull the carriage, and continue. And it took him years to get here. I mean, this is not really encouraged. It's not like, okay, you want to be just, travel to Tibet doing prostration. But doing prostrations is really incredible. It's first of all really good for the body. It's like swim. It's like the Buddhist version of swimming. You move your entire body. Right, it's true. Actually, it's very healthy. So you combine exercise with spiritual practice, and then it's a powerful purification practice, but it's not about torturing yourself, of course. It should be understood. So, and it's also not a solution to all our problems. It's a powerful purification practice and a good way to balance a lot of sitting with movement. Yeah. Anyway.
I think here the point is that suffering is purifying, isn't it?
Yes, exactly.
We don't have that in Buddhism.
Pardon?
Nagarjuna said that mental asceticism is really important, but physical asceticism is not.
Sorry, I didn't get the question.
The point is that it is suffering.
Yes.
The experience of suffering that is purifying.
Okay.
That's why they drink.
Right.
Harm themselves, because
Yes.
that self-harming
I
is
see.
considered purifying.
Right.
Which is also what people do these days. They
Right.
harm themselves and they feel that's purifying themselves.
That's true. Oh, you're talking about people cutting themselves? Like cutting themselves? Yeah, I don't know whether that's like a purification. I think it just takes away the focus. There's like a release, I've heard, of like some of the problems.
The anger that after they cut themselves, they're like releasing the anger from them.
It feels like a relief of some of the destructive emotions. But yeah, I agree like with Venerable Gyaltsen Lamola, what she's saying about like flagellating yourself. That seems to be, but in Buddhism, of course, when you do these practices, it's not about just the suffering of like, if you do prostrations without the right kind of mental attitude, it's just exercise. So really the mental state is most important, the four powers.
It's a joyful mind, isn't it? It's
Right.
not about causing yourself suffering.
That's true. Yeah, it's not about suffering. Yeah, it's not about torturing yourself.
Torture yourself for the
Yeah.
sake of it.
No, it's true. It's hardship that's involved, but you should stop when it gets painful and so forth anyway. You shouldn't continue. I mean, a little bit of pain, I'm saying like when it gets really hard, then it becomes like an ascetic practice, and that's not encouraged. Yeah, absolutely. Very
It's
true.
also an exercise to practice.
Humility? Pardon?
Isn't it also an exercise to practice patience?
To practice patience? I would have thought humility, but patience. Okay, practice patience. How?
Is that
To practice patience with hardship?
no, I think this is a practice they use.
So doing prostrations is a practice of patience.
No,
Oh, like flagellating? What?
flagellating, for example, or also cutting the body and having compassion for the.
Oh, do you have to cut yourself to I mean, I think the cutting yourself, we're talking about like modern day kind of young people cutting themselves.
It's about.
I don't think how can you practice patience in that? Patience with the pain?
I think I use the wrong words for the right action.
The wrong
Forget
word.
it. Just forget it.
People,
Forbearance, maybe, like
Yes,
being able to,
forbearance. It's
being
the
able
same,
to, yeah. Okay, so to undergo hardships in order to become stronger, basically. I don't think you need to flagellate yourself for doing that. I mean, just doing your practice. It's boring sometimes, isn't it? It's pretty boring to just sit there. I would rather be more entertained, but I mean, most of our practices initially, it takes some time to do it and keep doing it. That's also a way to discipline your mind, basically. Okay, anyway. All right, let's go on. We don't have much left. I want to finish those 16 today. How far did we go? Oh yeah, no, 15, right? A true path, such as the wisdom directly realizing selflessness, is an actualizing means because the pristine wisdom directly realizing the final mode of existence of the... Oh yeah, sorry, I've already read that. So believing that certain states of minds are that are not the direct realization of emptiness, they're not the pristine wisdom of selflessness, but that there are other states, like the concentrations, and that they are liberation or means to liberation, and again, they're not. And then means for definite eradication is the last one, number 16. Such as the wisdom directly realizing selflessness is a means for that eradication because it's an antidote that irrevocably eliminates suffering. Understanding this counteracts the wrong view that there's no path capable of eradicating suffering. So since the Charakas and the Mimamsakas do not accept liberation, they likewise do not hold that there exists a path that eliminates suffering. With this explanation of the 16 aspects of the specific wrong views that counteract in place, the full force of the objection becomes apparent. So what is the objection by this other person? They're saying, if you understand that, you can become liberated. I mean, they talk about just selflessness, basically, the coarse type of selflessness, to go back to the original kind of debate that's been going on with the Prasangika school saying you have to realize emptiness. Without it, you won't become liberated. And then these 16 aspects, I mean, they're really sophisticated, aren't they? They're really amazing. You talk about the afflictions, you talk about karma, and you seem to hit the nail. I mean, you seem to really get at what you're trying to get at, except emptiness is not mentioned. I mean, selflessness, the word emptiness was mentioned here, but really it's about selflessness, the actual nature of, I did use the word emptiness because I copied it from, or I used a Tibetan text and translated that where the word emptiness is mentioned, but it's mainly focused on selflessness, and it's the coarse type. And all the other schools, except the Prasangika school, they argue that is enough because you're dealing with the afflictions and you're okay. But of course, Lama Tsongkhapa argues no, that's not enough. So despite this really kind of sophisticated philosophy of these 16 aspects, they do not mention emptiness, and so they fall short of counteracting what needs to be counteracted. So the objection that someone presented before, and this is just an explanation of the 16 aspects, but now what did someone else say previously? It rests on the claim, that objection that someone presented, that contemplation of these characteristics is not merely preparatory, as the Prasangika school would say. The Prasangika school say they're preparatory. They're important, these 16 aspects. Basically saying, don't get me wrong, they're really helpful, but not sufficient. While the other schools say they are sufficient to generate the supermundane path, these direct realizations that serve as the direct antidotes to the afflictions and their potential to arise again, their seats or the potential for these afflictions to rise again and again. First, the path of seeing that directly realizes the 16 characteristics of the Four Noble Truths, and then the path of meditation that repeatedly familiarizes with that realization. So they say that's all you need. First you have the path of seeing, then you have the path of meditation, you become liberated. This claim draws on a point accepted by all Buddhist schools. Through valid cognition, through valid realization, so incontrovertibly coming to know something, one can first inferentially and then directly apprehend the 16 aspects. That's true. You can. First conceptually, you think about them conceptually, and then that mind can transform into a direct realization. So what does valid cognition refer to? It refers to a reliable and incontrovertible type of mind that is of two kinds: inferential cognition and direct perception, both of which realize their objects. So this inferential means just independence on correct reasoning. You can come to understand something, can come to understand that the self doesn't exist the way it appears because of all the reasonings. There are certain cues, there are certain other things we can know about the self, that it constantly changes, that the self cannot be found among the aggregates, or if like an owner such as the self were to exist, where would it be? So there are certain reasonings that point in that direction, and on that basis we can inferentially come to know such a self is impossible. But then based on that, we can intensify that realization, grow more familiar with it, and come to directly experience it. There's these two types of realizations or valid cognition, both of which realize their objects. So all Buddhist philosophical schools accept that that working of the mind. I mean, the ability to come to know something through reasoning and then strengthening our realization through familiarity and experience it directly. They all agree. But again, it's not enough, the Prasangika school says, to just realize this core selflessness. Of these 16 aspects, the principal one realized by the path of seeing and the path of meditation, of course, is selflessness, right? These 16 aspects, the fourth aspect was selflessness. That's the main aspect. Although they say, yeah, you have to realize all 16, but really main focus is on that coarse type of selflessness. So here, as we noted above, selflessness is understood in a coarse sense, namely the absence of a self-sufficient, substantially existent self that is neither identical with nor separate from the aggregates. So once this type of selflessness has been realized conceptually, it is reasonable within this line of argument to assume that the principal trainees of the foundational path, hearers and solitude realizers, can cultivate deep familiarity with it through sustained meditation. All this is true. The lower schools, the Prasangika accepts this, that this is possible, that you can attain a direct realization of core selflessness. And from this familiarity, the argument continues, one can infer the possibility of direct realization. Yes, once you've inferentially cognized there's no such core self, then you can meditate on this and directly realize it. According to Buddhist epistemology, when a correct conceptual understanding is sufficiently cultivated, it can give rise to what's called yogic direct perception. And on this basis, the objectors maintain that a direct realization of the absence of a self-sufficient, substantially existent self can be cultivated, as established through reasoning, such as that presented by Acharya Dharmakirti, in the second chapter of his Pramanavartika, or Exposition of Valid Cognition. So this is still, Lama Tsongkhapa gave this long explanation of those philosophers of the lower schools, the non-Prasangika school, and that is their argument. So given these premises, if a direct realization of this kind of selflessness of persons is accepted, it appears that the standard structure of the path follows. The path of seeing, which directly apprehends its object, would eliminate the acquired afflictions and their seats. So this is what they insist on. Once this has occurred, the path of meditation would be established as well. Because what is the path of meditation? It consists in repeatedly familiarizing oneself with that which has already been directly experienced. So directly seen. Through this continued familiarization, the innate afflictions and their seeds would also be eliminated. Okay. So, okay, it goes on and on and on. I tried to explain everything that Lama Tsongkhapa described, so maybe it's really too long. I went through everything Lama Tsongkhapa said and then explained it, but now that I'm reading it, I'm thinking it's so long, you already understood it. If both acquired and innate afflictions are eliminated, the argument concludes, then all the afflictions of the three realms, together with their seeds, would be brought to cessation. So it would appear, therefore, from this perspective, one could eliminate all the afflictions without realizing selflessness or emptiness in the Prasangika sense. So that's what it comes down to. They say it's too difficult, you don't need to realize that. The eliminations would have taken place through the supramundane path of seeing, path of meditation, just as in the standard account of liberation. So it's enough to just realize the 16 aspects of the Four Noble Truths. This reasoning is what makes the issue so difficult. It relies exclusively on widely accepted Buddhist concepts, the 16 aspects of the Four Noble Truths, valid cognition, yogic direct perception. Everything is accepted by the Prasangika. They say, yes, 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 all this is true, but it's not enough. So it's extensively explained in the Buddhist scriptures, yet it undermines the claim central to the Prasangika school that realization of emptiness is indispensable for the cessation of true suffering and its origin, and thus for the elimination of the obstructions to liberation. Okay, so that was this really long passage from Lama Tsongkhapa. On what page was it? It was one of the longest sections that I didn't break up to explain every part. And it basically just went on and on and on, explaining why the 16 aspects. So that was on 172 and 173. Why the 16 aspects are enough. So that's the argument here presented once again, the 16 aspects, but then also how they believe, and they say everything that the Prasangika says, everything, except they replace emptiness with core selflessness. Okay, all right, that should be enough, and then we'll continue. So today we did quite a bit, 5 pages, yep, more than that. 70, yeah, a little more than 5 pages, maybe, yeah. So we got to 182, and then of course comes Lama Tsongkhapa's response, not Lama Tsongkhapa, the Prasangika school's response, that is Acharya Chandakirti, to what we just heard. All right, great. Okay, let me just check, because we don't have much left. We only have 6 classes left. Oh, there's a little bit of the Chittamatra school. Lama Tsongkhapa starts already introducing us to the mind-only school. As you may remember, we talked a lot about understanding the Prasangika school better by comparing it with some of the other schools. So there'll be a little bit about the Chittamatra school next time. Okay, great. Then let's dedicate whatever positive potential we've accumulated. In the snow-encircled land, you are the source of benefit and bliss. Avalokiteshvara, Denzin Gyatso, please remain in life until samsara ends. May the precious Bodhi mind, not yet born, arise and grow. May that born have no decline, but increase forevermore. May the precious view of emptiness, not yet born, arise and grow. May that born have no decline, but increase forevermore. All right, thank you. Since I spent a lot of time on the messages, I didn't pay attention to the messages today, but I will. Oh, yeah, there's Thomas, Hella. No, there weren't that many. All right, thank you.